The answer is I don't know. There's a question that I've been avoiding, but of course, we would have come to it eventually. Where is Ramah? Is it the same as Ramatayim Tzofim, where Shmuel comes from? If not, where are each of them? And why are their names so similar? Regarding the last question, we've already mentioned the area of Binyamin has a lot of hills. Like we said, Ben Ktefav Shachen. And as such, there are many places with names like Ramah, Giva, Givon, Geva, Mitzpeh, which means a place with a good view, and the likes. This does, however, make it hard to identify the different places. Firstly, there's a difference in general between Ramah of Binyamin and Ramatayim Tzofim, which is mentioned as being in Har Ephraim, though, as noted, Har Ephraim itself is a term that can have a number of potential meanings, and it could include parts of Binyamin at times. That being said, it says he comes from the family of Tzuf, and they're located more on the southwestern area of Nachalat Ephraim. This would seem to also be indicated in the fact that it's called Ramatayim Tzofim, perhaps referring to a town built over two conjoined hills or a hill with two peaks in the area of Tzuf. Ramatayim, meaning two hilltops, Tzofim, perhaps plural for hilltops within Tzuf. It could perhaps also mean two hills with a good view. Either way, it would seem that it's not the same as Ramah of Binyamin. A number of times it mentions Shmuel's house being in Ramah, and at the end of Perek Chafhei, it says he was buried there as well. This would seem to be Ramah of Binyamin, not Ramatayim Sofim. Otherwise, it would have specified. I also wonder if Shmuel would have considered Ramatayim Sofim his home anyway. He didn't really grow up there. On the other hand, home is where family is, and in your family Nachala. Either way, it would seem that Ramah is in Binyamin. In theory, this should be a very simple topic, as if we know where he was buried, and we know he was buried in Ramah, then what's the question? The question is how far back can we trace the tradition of Kever Shmuel being in the place currently known as Kever Shmuel or Nebi Samuel? Again, I would like to start by saying that I personally very much like to dive into Hashem right here and connect with the character, lessons, and zchuyot of Shmuel HaNavi in this place. And again, if it isn't his kever, it's a tziyun. And it became Kodesh through hundreds of years of tears and tefillahs poured out here over the centuries. In this case in particular, even if it's not the actual kever, it surely seems to be a proper place for the tziyun, as it certainly seems to connect with his neshama, as we'll see. When I first started guiding, I was told by the experts in the field that there's nothing here from the relevant time period, and as such, this could not be the correct place. Archaeology is a wonderful tool, but far from an accurate science, as we've said before, and I expound upon this in my Archaeology of the Tanakh specialty course. Proof can't be based on what you haven't found. Or, as they say in the legal profession, absence of evidence does not mean evidence of absence. And so, later on, as they continued to dig here, they did find remains from settlement during that time. So that's out. Still, there are sites with traditions that can be traced back to incredibly early times, such as Marat HaMachpelah in Hebron and Kever Yosef in Shechem. There are sites on the other side of the spectrum that were only, so to speak, found in the last couple decades, such as that of Shimshon and Manoach or Dan ben Yaakov. These sites are certainly in the right area, but is that place the actual site of the kever? Less than 2 decades ago, it was a random Muslim sheikh grave with no traceable Jewish tradition to it. Most, though, are on neither of these sides of the spectrum. They're in the middle. Most, though, are from the Middle Ages, traditions that can be traced back hundreds of years, but not thousands. Here, it's also a bit more complicated. On the one hand, the modern sources seem to be based on erroneous Crusader conclusions. The Crusaders really made a mess of things. They simply made things up based on where they thought things should be. In this case, of Binyamin of Tudela, the famous 12th century Jewish traveler who left us an important journal of his visit to the land, writes of the Crusader church built here in honor of Shmuel HaNavi, whose kever was found in Ramleh and moved to this place. The Crusaders thought they found his kever in Ramleh, south of Tel Aviv, because they found an old kever in a city that sounds like Ramah, but Ramah was very much not in Ramleh, which is Ramleh is the only city that was actually founded by the Arabs when the land was under their control, where there had been no city beforehand. As such, whatever they brought up from Ramleh I don't know who it was, but it certainly was not Shmuel HaNavi. That being said, that doesn't necessarily mean that there was no Jewish tradition in this place beforehand. It simply means that any part of the current tradition that may have been influenced by the Crusaders is certainly very weak. In general, most academics say today that Ramah of Binyamin was likely by a site not far from here called Aram, which preserves its name. And that this site of today is still related to Shmuel in that it could be Mitzpah, where Shmuel was very active. I'll generally come here to talk about Mitzpah, as the main suggestions of where Mitzpah could have been was either here by the scene of Shmuel HaNavi of today, or across the valley by a place called Tel Naspe, which we can't really visit as it's in the outskirts of Ramlah, but it's the same general area. There is, however, a Masorah, or tradition, that can be traced back at least to the Middle Ages of visiting the Tziyun of Shmuel on his yahrzeit on the 28th of Iyar, as noted by the Radbaz and others. This would remain the practice on and off, as Jews were allowed to the site or not, depending on the current ruler or if enough bribery money was paid. This continued until the Independence War, when we lost control of the area to Jordan. For the next 19 years, we were separated from the tune of Shmuel HaNavi until the 28th of Iyar, 1967, when during the Six-Day War, precisely on Shmuel HaNavi's yahrzeit, the site was liberated by the Israeli army, and we were once again able to visit this site, connect with the Zchuyot of Shmuel HaNavi, and to daven here. So, is it Ramah or Mitzpah or other? Is this site Shmuel's kever or Tziyun? I don't know. But either way, it's a very special place to be able to come here and visit, to connect, to daven, and to learn a whole lot of Tanakh just from a simple look around at the amazing views here. For our purposes in this program, we'll come here to learn about and connect with Shmuel, but we'll mainly consider it as a good potential identification for Mitzvah.